The desert town of al-Dabbah in Sudan's northern state is quiet under a pale morning sun. But on this day, the silence is broken by the deep thudding sound of rotors cutting through the air. A military helicopter descends, kicking up dust and sand across the open plain. From it steps General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, Sudan's de facto head of state and commander of the National Army. He arrives not as a politician behind a podium, but as a soldier walking into a crisis zone. Around him, the displaced families from Fasher watch closely. Some wave, others hold small flags. All carry the exhaustion of months of war. 2 weeks ago, Fasher, the capital of North Darfur, fell to the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF. The fall marked the end of government control over all 5 regional capitals in Sudan's western Darfur region. What began as a rivalry between 2 military factions has now become a nationwide catastrophe, uprooting millions and fracturing the state itself. As al-Burhan steps onto the ground, he greets local officials, shaking hands with aid workers and tribal elders. His expression is composed, part soldier, part survivor. Behind him, officers fan out, securing the perimeter as hundreds of refugees crowd the edges of the landing zone. Many cheer as the general raises his hand in salute. The gesture, brief but deliberate, seems to acknowledge both hope and defiance. Around him, the camp stretches far into the horizon. Rows of makeshift tents, mud shelters, and tarpaulin roofs. Children peek from behind, aid trucks bearing the insignia of the Sudanese Red Crescent. Women line up for food rations. For most here, this is not a temporary stop. It has become their new reality. The war that began in April 2023, when al-Burhan and his rival RSF commander Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, known as Hemedti, turned their guns on each other, has since torn Sudan apart. The fighting has destroyed Khartoum, split the military, and driven over 10 million people from their homes, according to UN estimates. The humanitarian crisis ranks among the world's worst and least visible. Today, al-Burhan's visit carries a clear message. The army is still present, still functioning, still claiming legitimacy. His convoy moves slowly through the camp as people wave from the roadside. Cameras capture his raised fist, a symbolic gesture of strength at a time when his authority is being tested across the country. He stops to speak with aid workers. The exchanges are brief, but telling discussions about food shortages, medical supplies, and the worsening conditions as winter approaches. We are doing everything possible to protect our people, he says, his voice firm, almost defiant. Sudan will not be divided. Our nation will rise again. These words echo across a population weary of promises. For many refugees here, the question is not politics, but survival. Most fled Fasher on foot, crossing hundreds of kilometers through contested territory. Witnesses speak of shelling, airstrikes, and the chaos of RSF patrols sweeping through neighborhoods. One man holding a small child tells local reporters, "We ran when the bombs started falling. We left everything behind, our homes, our families, our memories." The RSF's capture of Fasher was a turning point. With it, the paramilitary now controls nearly all of Darfur, from Janina in the west to Niala, Zalingay and El Dayen. Only the country's east and north remain under the regular army's grasp. The loss underscores the government's shrinking control and the fragmentation of national authority. Inside a large tent, al-Burhan meets with displaced community leaders and military officers. Seated in a semicircle, they discuss the situation in North Darfur and the flow of refugees now heading northward. The general listens intently, occasionally jotting notes. Cameras pan across the room, faces marked by fatigue, uniforms dusted from travel. Outside, Red Crescent volunteers distribute supplies under the shade of worn tarps. One aid worker, speaking anonymously, says the scale of need has overwhelmed their capacity. Every day, new families arrive. There is not enough food, not enough medicine. The water is scarce. Diseases are spreading. We are doing our best, but the needs are enormous. The humanitarian agencies on the ground have repeatedly called for safe access to conflict zones. Yet the ongoing fighting, shifting front lines, and bureaucratic restrictions make it nearly impossible to reach many of the displaced. In Fasher itself, humanitarian corridors remain closed, with reports of looting and attacks on convoys. As al-Burhan moves through the camp, the crowd thickens. Some chant his name, others stand silently, watching. It is a moment heavy with symbolism. To his supporters, he represents the state's last defense against chaos. To his critics, he is one half of a war that has shattered Sudan's cities and futures. The general pauses near a cluster of tents, greeting an elderly woman wrapped in a faded scarf. She tells him she has lost her sons in the fighting, one in Khartoum, another in Fasher. He bows his head slightly. "May God protect the people of Sudan," he murmurs. Cameras capture the moment, a fleeting image of empathy amid the wreckage. Helicopters hover in the distance, part of the military escort that brought him here. Dust swirls as the rotors turn. The symbolism of this visit is unmistakable. While the RSF tightens its grip in Darfur, the head of the army is physically present among the displaced, projecting resolve and legitimacy. Sudanese state media presents the visit as a gesture of solidarity, emphasizing the government's commitment to the people. But beyond the official narrative lies a harsher truth. The army's position is precarious. With Khartoum largely in ruins and much of Darfur lost, al-Burhan's control now depends on alliances in the north and the Red Sea coast, backed by external support from Egypt and other regional players. Diplomatic efforts to end the conflict have repeatedly stalled. Ceasefire talks in Jeddah, brokered by the United States and Saudi Arabia, collapsed after repeated violations by both sides. The United Nations warns that Sudan is on the brink of total collapse. Yet the world's attention remains elsewhere, overshadowed by other crises in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. Back in Dabbah, as the day wears on, al-Burhan sits with his officers under a makeshift tent. Around him, soldiers in fatigues share tea and bread with aid volunteers. It's a scene that blends military presence with humanitarian effort, a rare coexistence in a war where both sides have been accused of atrocities. Observers say the general's visit is as much about optics as it is about morale. He needs to show that he still controls territory, that he still has an army that can operate, explains a Sudanese political analyst based in Port Sudan. But every time he travels, it also shows how fragmented the country has become. Each visit is a reminder of what has been lost. In recent weeks, international pressure has grown on both al-Burhan and Hemedti to halt the fighting. The African Union, IGAD and United Nations have proposed frameworks for a transitional government, but deep mistrust and competing regional interests have stalled progress. Meanwhile, civilians continue to bear the brunt. Across Sudan, more than 25 million people, over half the population, now need humanitarian aid. Famine looms in parts of Darfur and Kordofan. Hospitals have been destroyed, markets burned, and power grids shattered. The country's infrastructure, once fragile, is collapsing entirely. As the visit nears its end, al-Burhan stands once more before the crowd. His voice, amplified by a small loudspeaker, carries across the dusty camp. "Our fight is not against our people," he declares. "It is against those who seek to destroy our country. We will restore peace. We will rebuild Sudan." The refugees applaud, though many know that peace remains distant. The RSF's control over the west and parts of the south is deepening, and reports of ethnic violence continue to emerge from rural areas. For the displaced of Fasher, words alone cannot replace homes, food or safety. The general turns toward his helicopter, accompanied by aides and guards. He waves one last time as the rotors begin to spin. The wind whips through the camp, lifting sheets of dust and sand into the air. For a moment, the crowd raises their hands, some in salute, others in silent prayer. Then the helicopter lifts off, shrinking into the pale Sudanese sky. From above, the camp appears as a patchwork of tarps and tents, stretching endlessly into the desert, a testament to a nation's suffering and resilience. Below, life goes on. Aid trucks roll in, children chase shadows, women cook over small fires, The war has displaced millions, but it has not erased hope entirely. As the dust settles once more over al-Dabbah, Sudan remains at a crossroads between survival and collapse, between warlords and civilians, between memory and forgetting. For General al-Burhan, this visit may project strength, but for those who watched him leave, it is another day in a long and uncertain struggle for peace.